Welcome to the Winning in Business podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Rissy, and I love talking to business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs who are winning in business. Are you ready to reach your next level of success? If so, join us on the Winning in Business podcast as I interview entrepreneurs, business professionals, and leaders who share how they've risen to success. Before we begin, go ahead, hit subscribe and the notification button so you'll be notified each time a new episode is released. Plug in and settle in. You're about to be inspired to rise up to your next level of success. Welcome, everybody, to the Winning in Business podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Rissy, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Conor Hughes. Conor Hughes is a certified HR business partner with comprehensive experience revolutionizing HR operations. He is a board member of the Westchester Human Resources Management Association and a key contributor to many professional HR networks. He is a resident of Westchester, New York, where he started his career in HR at the Jacob Burns Film Center, and he never misses a chance to attend one of their events. Conor is a self-proclaimed coffee enthusiast, and he can usually be found on a trail hiking to catch a sunset or packing his carry-on bag to travel to some remote destination. So I met Conor through LinkedIn, and I clicked on his profile purely out of curiosity because I know another Conor Hughes. And I was like, oh, I have to know another one in my life. And then I saw that we both kind of share a love of acting and started in that. So that is why I connected with him and then found out he is such a true powerhouse in what he does. So I'm excited to be interviewing you today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Yeah, acting, we gotta love that, right? It's a game for adults.
Yes. So let's get started. Let's tell everybody, like, how did you get into what you do? Like, just your story, because I feel like it is diverse in a way, and yet you have quickly moved through the ranks in what you do. So just give us the rundown, share.
Yeah, sure. Well, so to go back to the acting, that's kind of where it really all started. I originally went to school studying to become a teacher. That was like my passion. I wanted to do that. And at that time, though, New York State had just laid off about 250,000 teachers. And so I came to a decision that, by the time I graduated, the market was going to be, almost impossible to find a job. So I switched over to studying psychology. And it was through psychology that I got into acting. I loved human behavior. I loved figuring out what made people tick, what their motivation was, and just what the human experience is. So my experience getting into acting was fueled by my studies. And I fell in love with it. I did TV and film mostly. I went to the HB studio down in Manhattan in Greenwich Village, and it's a passion of mine. I really, really enjoy it. And so it was through acting at the time that I wanted to find a job that was kind of associated with the entertainment industry, but would also bring in a routine paycheck. Because anyone else out there who understands acting, we know it's feast or famine. Yeah. And so I ended up joining the Jacob Burns Film Center in Pleasantville. The Jacob Burns Film Center is an art house movie theater and film center. They produce different films, short films. They've had Oscar-winning directors produce some of their work with them, and they show a lot of independent documentaries and art house films. It's a really fantastic institution. So I decided to join them, and I was working as a house manager. And at one point, about a year into being there, a position opened up in the HR department for an HR coordinator. And I had figured, maybe I kind of wanted something that had a bit more of a normal schedule, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I joined in there, and I found that getting into the HR space as like an HR coordinator assistant, it felt like the more corporate professional expression of what I love so much about acting. It was human beings. It was those stories. It was that motivation. It was like, how do you inspire people? How do you change? What drives like individuals? And I was like, wow, okay, so I have a passion for acting. But this is the same sort of passion, but connecting with human beings in real life and on a very tangible level instead of just storytelling. And so it kind of all started at the Jacob Burns Film Center, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So I was at the Burns for quite a while. my role sort of started to expand as they saw that some of my competency was kind of above what they had originally had planned for the job. And at one point, it got to a place where I kind of outgrew the role, which they loved and I loved. And everyone there was just the biggest cheerleaders and supporters for me. As I decided to move on to another organization, I decided at that time to go and join another nonprofit in Westchester as their compensation and benefits manager. And at the same time, that's when I joined WRMA, the Westchester Human Resource Management Association. It's a local chapter of SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. And when I got to this new nonprofit, it was a much bigger role, a lot of new experiences, things I never had, participated in before. And again, I found that I started to rapidly outgrow that role, and my supervisors and leaders also saw that and recognized that. So they started to expand my responsibilities, expand my duties. And a couple of months into it, I was then promoted to associate director of HR. For a brief period of time, I served as the interim director of HR while we were seeking out a permanent replacement. And it's been a whirlwind. And it's really interesting and kind of unique how it just has been growing so rapidly. It's a little scary and kind of, makes me a little fearful, but it's really exciting at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I know that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today is, and before we dive into that, just really becoming friends with the fear, as you like to say, what has been your biggest challenges through your career, personally, whatever you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, like any human being, right? We all have our story and our hero's journey, if you will. And I've definitely faced quite a few of mine, losing my parents at a very young age, having to deal with just life in general. But something that had been reoccurring for me for a very long time was not really feeling fulfilled. And I feel like that's a genuine human sort of experience that we can all kind of, associate with, right? And feeling disconnected from what I really wanted to do and what my passion was. In today's day and age with technology and all the different opportunities that are out there, it's very difficult to feel like you have to sort of pigeonhole yourself into one area of life and say, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do for the next 40, 50 years. And so I was always really struggling with fulfillment. And part of the thing that I feel so grateful for right now is that the organizations that I decide to partner with, like the Jacob Burns Film Center, Lincoln Hall, the Westchester Human Resource Management Association, these are nonprofits, these are social impact organizations, these are organizations that have a cause. And my participation with them and partnering with them as an HR business partner makes me feel that my work is going towards a greater good. And that allows me to, at the end of the day, let my shoulders down and say, okay, I did today and I feel good about it.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
I do feel like sometimes when we're not, or when we don't see what we're doing as helping the greater good is when we don't feel fulfilled, right? And sometimes it can be, oh, I need to be doing something. And sometimes it's switching the perspective around of what we're doing and just finding the way that, oh, wait, I really am helping the greater good,
Right,
So,
right. Yeah. And I think that's also a really interesting point as well. For me, that's what kind of drives me, but that doesn't have to be what drives everybody. It's just finding, I think, fulfillment and joy in that moment or in whatever you're doing. You don't
yes.
have to be partnered with a nonprofit or working with, disadvantaged and underserved kids across the country. But as long as you're finding something that kind of makes you happy, I think that's what it's about.
Yes. And that goes back to that connective energy, right? Because when we're happy, then our energy goes out and then just, out into the world. So, oh yeah.
Right.
So, what do you feel like being in the HR space, what has changed the most since the pandemic?
Oh, everything. Everything.
Loaded question.
Right. Yeah. So obviously the pandemic has really shaken the world and changed a lot of how many different industries operate. And particularly for HR, it has really been about transformation and being able to pivot and really having acute change management skills. So in HR, I kind of consider myself a more progressive HR leader, right? I'm a millennial. I've kind of grown up with a different sort of, age bracket where we have different values, right? And so HR traditionally in the past was kind of like a corporate barrier between the C-suite and the staff, right? And they were really focused on compliance and then they're focused on confidential and personnel issues. HR has evolved to become a champion for people. And I think that's what I love so much about being in HR, because my mantra when I got into acting was that I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless. And I'm finding that I'm able to do the same exact thing in HR right now. We've sort of evolved to a place where we are looking at the employee experience and what is work-life balance and how are we genuinely and truly supporting employees. We're looking at, fair compensation. We're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, justice. HR has really kind of blown up. And I think if you haven't been able to tell, I can like really geek out over this, but I would say HR has kind of become more of shifted from a more structured masculine energy to a more energetic, creative female sort of a feminine energy, should I say, not female necessarily, but a feminine energy where it's about connection and it's about authenticity. Authenticity. That's what it's about. It's about authenticity.
Yes. Oh, love it.
Yeah.
I want to read something that you have on your website.
Sure.
Says, Conor Hughes is a result-driven individual who enjoys a challenge and takes the opportunity to learn something new at every chance possible. Conor is a self-starter who is motivated by the success of those around him, being part of a team and lending support to others. And helping them grow is what truly brings him exponential happiness. And I just read that and like lit up. I was like, oh, that sounds so awesome. So that's fantastic. When talking about your career and the fact that you've been able to just move up and keep going and you outgrow the roles that you're in and just that momentum. What tips do you have for listeners? Like, how were you able to really do that for people that do want to take that fast, quick pace?
Yeah. Well, there's quite a few things. All right. So if I could boil this down to two major things, is I would say that you have to really believe in yourself and you have to believe that you can do it. I think having that sort of mindset and that mentality that if you are dedicated enough and if you truly want it enough, it will happen, right? People sometimes will use the word like manifesting what I want in life and all these things. And while that has like a little bit of, hocus pocus with it, what I truly think about it is really shifting your mindset to say, this is what I want and I'm going to do it. And you just kind of sort of become laser focused, right? And so part of the thing in my personal journey here that has kind of led to my rapid growth in my career was that when I was at the Jacob Burns Film Center, I became so inspired by the work that I was doing. I wanted to know more. I just wanted to grab every book. I wanted to find mentors. I wanted to do all these different things. So I decided to go out and join SHRM, and I went through and I got my SHRM certification, and that opened so many doors for me. So looking for certain credentials within your industry that are specific to what you're doing, I think is really important. Go for it. And your employers, for the most part, will want to support you in that. And so, so I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And then, I mean, I feel like you hear so many people say this in life coaching or motivational speeches, but as I'm thinking of it now, I'm like, wow, a cliche is a cliche for a reason. Yeah. You have to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable, right? Every step that I've taken going into HR initially, leaving that organization that I consider, and in human resources, I don't like to use the word family, but like leaving these people who I cared so deeply about, going to a brand new position at a whole different company was really scary. But I had to be okay being uncomfortable with that. When you go outside of your comfort zone, that's when you really start to see your growth. And then I think that also kind of leads back to what I was saying before, where it's like, you have to really believe in yourself, because if you give yourself the chance, you'll see that you're more ready than you think you are. Like, you're more capable than you think you are. Like, you're powerful, and you have to believe in yourself. Like, that also is what ties me into all this. When you said, like, I love to see that inspiration and growth in others. I love that light bulb moment when I see that in another person, when I teach them a new skill, when I see them become more confident. Like, yes, like, you are powerful and I want you to know it.
Yes. I mean, that right there, for me as well, being a coach, that is one of the things that also lights me up, right? When I see the people that I'm coaching have that same thing, that belief in themselves, right? And my job as a coach is I'm going to believe in you until you believe it as much as I do. And the other thing that I thought of while you were talking about that is visualizing it, right? Because when we can see ourselves doing anything, like if we can see it, we can achieve it. And then and having that belief to do that. So loved that. And then, the comfort zone. I mean, you're right. Cliche, that's so true. That is truly where our growth lies, right? I mean, even just this, right? Kelly, you're going to start a podcast. Okay. And then
Right.
doing it scared, doing it, all the ways that we do. I'm going to share one quick story about when I went to New York. This was when I was a music theater major, and we had a little week-long thing where the music theater majors went to New York, and I went to a tap class. So as a former dancer, tap is my jam. I love it. And I went to a tap class, and first of all, I navigated New York City by myself. I got to the tap class, like that was big in itself. And then I hung with those New York tappers, right? Like this is an advanced class, and I succeeded, and I got out of my comfort zone getting there. Then I had to make sure I got back home. Like it was all out of my comfort zone. And one of the most amazing things that I will remember just about that experience and how it gave me just stepping out of my comfort zone and doing that then gave me the confidence to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, So is there anything that stands out to you where you've gotten out of your comfort zone, like you said, a lot, right? To just keep moving. Is there one thing, and it doesn't have to be in business, just in life in general, where you've really stepped out of your comfort zone?
Oh yeah. A lot of my my confidence and being able to step out of the comfort zone comes from a time in my life when I decided to go and start a new venture. I wanted to go and travel. I started a business. I started a side hustle as a blogger at the same time. And I one day just decided to pick up. I bought a one-way ticket to Ireland, and then I traveled for 6 months all throughout Europe. And I didn't know where I was going to go until the week beforehand or 2 weeks beforehand. And it was a state where I was loving life. I felt liberated, and I felt free, and I felt terrified at the same time. But in that terror and that discomfort, I got to really know who I was, right? And it was along that journey when I was sort of starting this blog and doing all these different things that I was reminded of a quote that I had actually said to my father at one point. This was shortly before he passed away. I had just come back from a music festival that I went out to in California. And I went by myself. It was thousands of people. I was camping in the woods for 4 or 5 days. And he had asked me, he was like, so what is one thing that you feel like you learned from this experience when I went to the music festival? I came back to him, and I had to think for a minute, and just very organically out of me bubbled this statement where it was like, if you trust that good, like you will see how good the world can be. And so I carried that through with me into my travels years later as I went through Europe. And it was just trust it, you'll figure it out. Like you're stronger than you think you are. And yeah, so that was a really pivotal moment for me in my life. That's when I became friends, I think, with fear.
So, you talk about this being friends with fear. I want to dive into that a little bit more. Like, what does that mean to you? How do you do it? If someone was going to ask you, like, well, I want to be friends with fear. Like, what do you tell them?
Think again. No. So what does it mean to be friends with fear, right? So I think on a professional level and on the personal level, as we've been discussing here, becoming friends with fear means that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're going and trying new things, that you're trusting that you'll be safe enough to kind of get there. But I more recently, I would say over the past 6 months, have kind of been looking at fear through a whole different lens. I am a huge advocate for mental health, and I think everybody, no matter who you are, should be going to talk to a therapist. I think it's probably one of the best things that you can do for yourself personally, professionally, anything. Everyone should be doing this. And so my therapist and I had been discussing recently fear and what does that look like in my life, and how do I recognize in those moments of anxiety or in those moments of panic or fear, like what is actually happening? Like I tune into my body, I tune into what was the thought that really sparked this, right? And becoming friends with fear not only has lent itself to me being able to push the boundaries, to be able to get to the next level in my career, to go and explore the world, this beautiful world that we live in, but it also helped me start to explore who I am. Right? When I started to understand my fear and become friends with fear, I started to realize what were my triggers? Where did those come from? Is there any kind of healing that might need to happen there? Is just the awareness of it enough for me to say, okay, that doesn't need to dictate my life, and I can choose to behave and react and respond differently. So it's a really broad topic, but it's powerful once you decide to kind of walk into that door and do the work.
That's wonderful. So agree. I think everyone needs like a therapist and a coach because we do
Mm,
two different things, right? And both can keep you truly moving forward and helping with your mental health. And I'm a neurolinguistics programming master practitioner. And through that, I have learned something called timeline therapy, which really deals with fear, right? And when we look at fear, you talked about like knowing where it really comes from. And sometimes it's back, something happened to us when we were two, right? That put this fear in us. And then it's a bit like our little tiny fear since then has built. And now we're X old, right? And if we don't go back and clear that up, and I feel that fear can also be generational. There are
mm,
certain things, you know what I mean? So it is definitely a place where all of us can go into some healing
yeah.
over our fear, and really looking at the way that I look at it also is, what are the positives that we can learn from it? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what is the learning from it to release that fear a little bit? So I just love that you brought that up. I think that's great.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier, you had talked a little bit about work-life balance. I believe you brought those words up. For
Mm,
you, how do you handle work-life balance?
yeah. Some days better than others, be very honest. Yeah, so work-life balance for me is, I think it has to start with being aware and cognizant of what you truly value in life, right? Only then can you start to understand what you want to balance and how you have to do that. I feel like a lot of times people hear the buzzword of work-life balance and they automatically think, okay, turn your phone off at 5 o'clock and then you're out of work for the rest of the day. And while that's one component to it, setting firm boundaries is important. But work-life balance to me is understanding how are the two tying together in a way that's supporting what I want out of life, right? And I feel like that's something that we're really starting to see a lot with the workforce that is kind of entering into for the demographics entering into the workforce right now, and then just everyone else. We're seeing people go for remote work, for flexible work options, for 4-day work weeks, and so work-life balance for me is really about making sure that I feel fulfilled in what I did at the end of the day, to feel accomplished, to feel proud of myself, and to say that I found some joy in that day. And then if we wanted to even break it down to specifics, which I mean, people could just probably do a simple Google search of that. It's about setting up those boundaries with your coworkers, with your boss, with your staff, making sure that you're supporting them, and making sure that you feel supported as well, and being vocal about that.
Yeah.
Um, Expectations I think are really important, and setting those clear expectations with others. That communication was really really key. I saw recently a talk by Brene Brown where she was saying that um, being clear is kind, right? As a leader, like you have to
Yes.
be clear, right? And I think that goes for everyone, not necessarily just leaders, right? Like you have to be clear to be kind with people. And so that helps me really set up my work-life balance in a way that I feel supported, and I also feel that I have um, compartmentalized where I need to, and then also be able to see like an overarching view, an eagle-eyed view, if you will, of how these things are all working together for who Conor is, like who I am. Like I think those are
Yeah.
parts of it.
I love that. And I love Brene Brown, huge
Mm,
fan of hers.
yeah.
I feel like, it's important for us to use our voice, not first of all, to set our boundaries, and then use our voice to let others know our boundaries so that they understand that we're setting the boundaries out of love for ourselves, love for them, so it's more of that type of approach. The other way I learned this from a coach that I know, and I just love this, it's not always about work-life balance, it's about work-life harmony.
Mhm.
Because there are times in my life where I'm going to be like, I was just on vacation, right? So let me tell you, this week has been about the hustle and the grind of getting back. And so there's that harmony of knowing like, okay, that's this week. But last week, there's never like a 50-50. Like it has to
Right.
be, it's just that harmony. And some days and sometimes I'm going to be working more, and other times I'm spending more time with family, I'm spending time on myself. So I like to think of it more of that harmony, and is that harmony in alignment, like
Mhm.
you said, with our values, our goals, and who we want to be. So I think that's
Yeah.
all beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. It's really about being holistic, right? It's about
Yes.
being holistic.
Yes, yes. And we
Yeah.
have mentioned, we've definitely mentioned the mindset and mental health, during this. So for sure. Are there Any accomplishments that you're really proud of that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think quite a few. I find it a little difficult to bring some of that stuff up because it feels like bragging, but also, you have to, in this day and age, really be, showcasing who you are, but also be genuinely proud of the fact that I put in the work to accomplish the things that
Yes.
I have, right? So, I would say reaching director level within the HR space within a very short period of time, I'm very proud of that. I am happy with it. I feel confident in my abilities and who I've become and how I do the work and the quality of my work. And I love the connections that I've made through that. Recently, I was nominated for Westchester's 40 Under 40 through the Business Council of Westchester. I've made connections. I've become a board member, probably one of the younger board members that our organization has seen in a while. I honestly, I think probably more recently, I think, and I'm probably more proud of this accomplishment than anything else. I have been mentoring a few colleagues of mine, and I'm seeing their growth, and I'm watching them start to become solution oriented, and I'm watching them start to take the next step without being guided to it. And I'm watching them grow, and I'm just like, oh yes, like I'm so happy for them. I'm like, that to me, really, I'm the most proud of.
Yes. And
Yeah.
the cool thing about that is that there were people that did that to us that
Mhm.
felt the same way as we were growing, and now
Right.
we get to mentor others and watch them,
Yeah.
step into their own. And I agree. I mean, I have two kids. And so watching just them alone, right? Their successes and being so proud of them, as well as people that I mentor. I love that. And congratulations on 40 Under 40. I mean, you kind of like threw that in and went right past it, but it's a big accomplishment. So congratulations.
Well, I appreciate it. It was a
Yeah,
nomination for it, and it was a fantastic group of people, and a great organization as well. So
yeah,
I really
yeah.
appreciate the nomination. Thank you.
Great. I do feel like that's something that, and maybe the next generation will be better at it, but that, we're so focused on our next accomplishments that we forget to stop and like congratulate ourselves and soak in what we just did before we're like, okay, done, moving on, really just appreciating that and the work that, to get the nomination, you had to show up and you had to do all the
Mhm.
things you've talked about and putting yourself out there and being kind and building relationships, all that stuff that, we can give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back for.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Conor, I know that you are like headed into big things, doing big things, a man on a mission. What are your goals for your future?
Yeah. So my two big goals for the future are to continue in HR and kind of like reaching the next level. I want to continue my career trajectory. I want to continue to climb and sort of keep reaching. I think that to me is really important, and it isn't necessarily because of status or title or power or salary, but I want to get into a place of influence where I can sort of help authenticity. I can foster authenticity within an organization. I want that to trickle down and have it really infiltrate the whole organization, the company, the business, so that it can be a place that is genuine for the employees and that people can show up to work happy and that they can feel fulfilled and that it's something that is I just want to get to a place where that becomes the norm, right? And that kind of goes along with my second goal. And this is something I discussed with some colleagues at the Business Council of Westchester, where I want to see HR as an industry get to a place where every organization's mission statement includes its employees. And I think that's really vital because these are the people who are doing the work. These are the people who we count on. These are the people who care about what we're doing, right? And if we're bypassing them to get to our customer, to get to our constituent or something like that, that I don't think is the best way. And that's not the way of the future, right? The way of the future is to make sure that we are creating an environment where every single person who touches that organization can feel authentic. They can bring their whole selves to work. They can feel joy and they can be productive and fulfilled because that's what I want. And that's what I want for other people as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here listening going, yes, I want that also. I'm like, oh, wait, I have my own business. Yes.
So you got it.
I got it. Oh, that's great. Okay. And then I know you are a coffee enthusiast. And so like, I just have to know, like, what's your favorite coffee?
Yeah, all right. So I feel like people are gonna be mad at me about this because I'll just say a cold brew, and I feel like they might have been expecting something fancy. Give me a cold brew any day. I just need the energy to keep me going. A flat white is also good. Um, and all if people think I'm crazy for this one, but this is usually my go-to. But it'll be a hazelnut black eye with 2 shots of espresso in it. Gets me really going for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I know you mentioned that you you love traveling. And did you already mention your favorite destination or do you have a different one?
Oh, I haven't mentioned it yet. And I feel like it always changes as well based off my moods. But I do have to say, one of the places I enjoyed the most was Carpathos. And it's a small island in Greece. And it was just one of the most peaceful times in my life. I decided to take a little break from traveling, spent 2 weeks on the beach. No one else was there. It was shoulder season. I was out there with my books, climbed
Oh,
mountains, did the whole thing. So, yeah,
oh,
Carpathos,
that
Greece.
sounds delightful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds excellent. Well, Conor, I want to thank you today for being on the podcast. And for those of you that want to connect with Conor, his website is www.conorhughes.com. And I am going to say that's Conor with one M,
That's
one
it.
N, excuse me, Conor. And then you could also find him on LinkedIn. So he is a great guy to connect with. And I encourage you all to do that. As listeners, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, and I'll see you next episode. Thank you for being a part of the Winning in Business podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to rise up to your next level of success, but are worried about increased stress, time for work and yourself and your family, not to mention being exhausted, I'd like to invite you to a complimentary strategy call where I'll show you how you can do it all. I'll help you reclaim time, keep your sanity, handle the chaos with ease, and move to the next level of success that you deserve and desire. I hope you found value in listening today. Please always leave your comments, feedback, or questions. We check them all. I want you to continue winning in business and reach your next level of success. See you next time.